manwa tu churo namen.
Zanawazo?
Goa. Nu do Mac.
When I say the word evolution, what do you think of? Some will have Pokemon or some other creature collector pop into their minds, while others think of Charles Darwin and his trip to the Galapagos Islands all the way back in 1835. But one thing I'm near certain of is that outside of the aforementioned pocket monsters, no one thinks of anime and manga. Because why would you? I mean, there are very few characters that truly evolve over time, such is the case for young Katsuki Bakugo, who transforms from a straight up asshole into someone who's not only tolerated, but beloved by the MHA fanbase. But these cases are few and far between, seen more as growth instead of a complete change down to their component parts. It's because of this almost lack of recognition that today I want to talk about how art evolves over time, and how a single story can change so much through the adaptations that you, by the end of this video, at least hopefully, will finally begin to think of manga and anime when the word evolution comes to mind. But you might be asking, what series could I possibly be talking about? And while I don't doubt that now that I've planted the seed, you've likely come up with an anime that you think embodies the essence of evolution, I do, however, doubt that yours is the same as mine. So you can call me Luckless. I'm the guy who thinks a bit too hard so that you don't have to. And today we're going to be talking about how solo leveling evolved from Mediocre to Masterclass.
Na minobis.
I apologize if some of the facts I've presented to you are incorrect. While researching for this video, I've tried to find the most reputable sources of information possible for the series and its creator, but finding them, let alone in English, has proved to be somewhat of a Herculean task. So I've had to fall back on sites like Wikipedia and Fandom, who seem to disagree quite a bit about the series' publication dates and platforms. Who would have guessed that sites you were explicitly told not to use when writing a research paper would be less than reliable? However, my videos are meant to be less informative and more opinion-based. I just wanted you to know that I'm aware I might be talking out my ass on this one, and I'm totally fine with it. Solo Leveling, or Only I Level Up by Chu Gong, began serialization as a web novel on Kakao Page on July 25th, 2016, and ran for 243 chapters, with 27 additional chapters titled Side Stories and Only I Level Up Later, until the story officially met its conclusion on March 13th, 2018. It was later picked up by DNC Media under their Papyrus Seedbooks label, which is dedicated to publishing genres such as fantasy and martial arts, under which books like The Destruction Level Death Knight Returns, A Great Mage Who Transcends into Mythology, and 1000-Year-Old Swordsman were also published. And on February 16th, 2021, a licensing agreement was made with Yen Press, publishers of Banished from a Hero's Party, I Decide to Live a Quiet Life in the Countryside, The World After the Fall, and one of my absolute favorites, The Beginning After the End. This would allow for the English release of the series in physical, digital, and even audio formats. This is where I stumbled across the series. Sure, it had been on my periphery for quite some time, as I'm a massive fan of isekai and power fantasy in general, but back then I didn't really have the time to read, so instead when I noticed it come across my Audible dashboard, it was as close to kismet as a situation could possibly get. From the very moment I pressed play and heard Ki Hong Lee's voice, I knew I was going to love the series. So I didn't actually know this until writing the script, but the narrator for Yen Audio's Solo Leveling light novel is actually the very same Ki Hong Lee who plays Minho in the Maze Runner movies. I don't know if it's just me, but I'm kind of flabbergasted by that. I love those movies, and it's a weird little crossover. There's just something so special about this unique brand of power fantasy. By setting the story in a world where literally no one can become more powerful, Chu Gong perfectly crafted an air of superiority to Jinwoo's every action. There's also the fact that, unlike most other isekai or power fantasy protagonists, Jinwoo isn't just using his knowledge of a past life to become more powerful. Characters like Rudius or Ainz, however fantastic they may be, have a distinct advantage over any, if not most, challengers, while Jinwoo is only as powerful as he wishes to be. Because of this, every scrap of power that he gains throughout the majority of this series, there's definitely some that he just gains out of nowhere and it kind of annoys me, but out of those few instances, it really really feels earned, and that, at least for me, is one of this series' greatest selling points. While others are out here scheming for power, Jinwoo's grinding, and I honestly respect the hell out of it. But that's not to say that the light novel is this perfect piece of fiction. On the contrary, I personally don't like the light novels. I think that they have extremely stilted dialogue, that they overuse exposition to a laughable degree, and I really can't stress this enough, I despise onomatopoeia. I think it's a perfectly valid way to set and describe a scene in manga and in comics, but it has absolutely no place in a novel. You know what? Actually, no. I don't think I completely hate it. I just think when it's used sparingly, onomatopoeia is perfectly fine. But this series just uses it so goddamn often that I feel like I'm gonna have an aneurysm. This, combined with Chugong's need to over-explain everything, is what made me move from the light novels to the manhwa in the first place. And just in case you think I'm exaggerating, this is an excerpt from the Karthanon temple scene in the light novel when Jinwoo first lays eyes on the statue. An image of the Statue of Liberty opened into Jinwoo's head. Would the Statue of Liberty be around the same size if she were seated on the same throne? Even though Lady Liberty was modeled after a female figure and this looked to be modeled after a male, the sheer size of the stone monolith brought the Statue of Liberty to mind. What? Why did you need to explain that so thoroughly? Every single person who knows what the Statue of Liberty is would understand exactly why it would come to mind when looking at a gigantic stone-robed statue. They're basically the same thing. It's kind of like Chugong thinks you're a dumbass at times. Nevertheless, despite its flaws, I think Chugong managed to do something incredible with these light novels. It laid a solid foundation for the series' future. For me, solo leveling as a piece of media is akin to a pseudo-legendary in Pokemon, like Larvitar, Bedlam, or Dreepy. The first form in its evolution line is not the best, and you know that there are better Pokemon out there, but you also know that if you stick it out, you're gonna run into something truly special. And in keeping with the Pokemon metaphor, that leads us to the next stop on the series' evolution line, the manhwa. I just have to preface this by saying I'm not exactly sure who wrote the manhwa. I know that seems kind of dumb because Chugong is the creator of solo leveling, so of course they would write the manhwa, but as far as I've seen, it's quite common for manga or manhwa adaptations of light novels to have completely different authors. This is the case for series like Tensura, Shield Hero, and Overlord, just to name a few. In the manhwa's print version, the credits read original story Chugong, adapted by H-Gun. This seems to have sparked a bit of debate online, as people seem to think that adapted means that H-Gun just worked on this structure of the manhwa's layout. After all, it is vertical scrolling. Well, personally, I think that means that H-Gun adapted the story to a comic format, aka wrote it. The digital credits also support this argument, as they read original novel Chugong, story H-Gun. Plus, I speak from experience when I say that writing, or at least attempting to write in my case, a novel is a whole different ballgame compared to writing a comic. Hell, writing comics is more akin to screenplays, as they both use stage directions. So moving forward, I'm working under the assumption that H-Gun wrote the manhwa. And with that out of the way, I just have to say this manhwa is amazing. While the light novel piqued my curiosity, the manhwa lit a fire inside me that could only be fed through the consumption of more panels. No joke, I think I read the manhwa from start to finish in a 2-week time span. I even bought a tablet because before that I was just reading on my phone's tiny screen, and I felt like I was missing out on so much of Zhang Sun Rock's amazing artwork by scrunching it onto a measly 720 by 1520p screen. RIP, by the way, you'll definitely be missed. The manhwa takes the world that Chugong managed to create with the light novels and molds it into something astounding. It accomplishes this by trimming the fat where necessary, replacing the bloated set descriptions with illustrations so awesome that I often had a hard time keeping it together while reading. But that's not all. The story carved a special place in my heart, not just through its menacing glares, but also through the addition of comedy to what was an otherwise bland power fantasy. There were times while reading that I actually laughed out loud, which is more than I can say for the light novels. Hell, it's not even just comedy. The manhwa injects real character into the story that the light novel just lacked. This is most easily showcased through Jinwoo's interactions with his shadow army. But this is something that you'll just have to kind of take my word for, because I don't really feel like spoiling one of the most anticipated characters in Solo Leveling's second season. Nevertheless, however large a step up the manhwa might have taken, it still lacks one crucial thing, a protagonist. Now I know there's certainly someone out there that's thinking I made this entire video without watching or consuming any form of solo leveling because of what I just said, but if you'll just give me a few minutes to explain. So I don't think that you can classify Jinwoo as a character. To me, he's no more than a long series of menacing glares. All of his relationships are superficial at best and have very little follow through, which I'll be honest is usually fine in power fantasy, as it's best that readers can see themselves within the protagonist. In short, it becomes their fantasy. But solo leveling isn't just your typical power fantasy. With each iteration, it begs to become something more, yet the manhwa failed to do so as it's held back by the one thing that's meant to drive the plot forward in the first place. So we once again return to the metaphor of evolution. While the light novel served as the series' skeleton by creating a framework for eventual excellence, the manhwa then wraps that skeleton in muscle fibers, tendons, and even forms a brain. But at this point, there's still one crucial piece missing from the equation, one that if acquired can invigorate this husk, that piece being its heart. Now we finally got to the last stop on solo leveling's evolution line and the purpose of this video, the anime. I just don't really know where to start with this anime. As someone who's invested quite a bit of time into this series through both the light novels and the manhwa, I went into this with low expectations. Okay, I gotta go change my shirt, it's so hot. Okay, that's better, as the latter has burnt me more often than not in the past. But it turns out there was no need. This adaptation was everything I could have asked for and more. Honestly though, I don't know why I expected any less. The team behind this is A1 Pictures, producers of some of my favorite anime including 86, Erased, and Anohana, just to name a few. Of course, knowing now how much they put out and how much of it's also trash, I guess I probably should have gauged my expectations a little bit better, but I'm still happy with the end result. Or more specifically, you have people like Shunsuke Nakahashi, Sota Furuhashi, and Kanako Takahashi, which I know for a fact I just butchered all those names. Sorry to everyone involved, including myself, who've worked on series ranging from Black Butler to Mashle and even Attack on Titan. From the very inception of the first episode, I knew that this anime was going to be amazing. As the scene fades from black to show a top-down view of Jeju Island, it immediately sets itself apart from its predecessors by establishing a clear boundary between its many ranks, by making us watch as supposedly low-rank hunters are mowed down left and right by a horde of crimson ants, only to be saved in their final moments by several S-rank hunters. But if that weren't enough, we also see the military surrounding the island complain about their inability to do anything to help. This, to me at least, is clear and concise world building. It's giving us a glimpse into this power system that I don't think we've seen in any adaptation prior. I understand that some might be annoyed by this tell don't show kind of storytelling, but it's the first episode and you honestly gotta set the scene somehow. Then we fast forward 3 years to see a man and a woman dressed in everyday attires standing around a construction site, an otherworldly portal looming not far from them. But they seem unfazed, like this is just a common everyday occurrence. This is where we're introduced to our leading man, Jinwoo Sung. As he approaches the construction site, there's great fanfare as people wave and shout hello. Notice, unlike many an isekai or low fantasy protagonist at that, Jinwoo actually has ties. He doesn't just lurk in the background, people know him, and more importantly, his presence informs them on how their day is going to go. This is such a subtle way of making this world and its characters feel real, but it pays dividends for our immersion. Fast forward a bit and you see two high-ranking officials speaking about how the governments of the world are interested in the loot from the dungeons, not for its initial purpose of outfitting those who delve into the portals, but instead as a power source that will bring clean energy to Earth for nearly the first time on a huge scale. The world building of this series is on point from its very inception, but it's not what makes this anime special, at least not for me. These same elements exist in the manhwa and in the light novel to a smaller extent. No, to see where solo leveling's true evolution lies, we have to skip forward a bit to 1330 into the first episode. The scene shifts from Jinwoo in the dungeon to a glass-adorned building. Inside side, we see several people waiting in a queue outside of a door. On the other side of said door, we see a young man holding his arm up to a massive black orb. To his right, a woman records his mana level before escorting him outside. The young man walks through the building, then he vanishes out of sight as another man takes center stage, speaking to one of the S-rank hunters from the beginning of the episode. The two men speak on the phone about the talent of hunters and how they'll never match up to a hunter named Hae-in Cha. With the mention of her name, we then shift to a purse snatcher riding on a moped that is then foiled by the aforementioned hunter. You might think that this is just a bit of filler to pad out the episode, but for me, this is a necessary bit of world building, and more importantly, it's the production team showing that they care about this world and the people enough to give them actual screen time of their own outside of Jinwoo's adventure. One of my biggest complaints with Solo Leveling is that characters are only really shown when Jinwoo needs them. It's like they cease to exist outside of his presence. Hell, I don't think that Hae-in Cha was introduced in the manhwa until episode 65, and even then it's only because Jinwoo sees her outside of a gate. But in the anime, she's shown far ahead of time and with absolutely no connection to our protagonist. She's just going about her everyday life. From then on, we continue to see characters that are important to the plot just going about their lives. Jin Ho-yu is at the Hunters Association headquarters attaining his license. Jin Ah-sung goes to the hospital to visit her mother, and many more. But I believe that this is best shown off with Jong-in Choi, the guildmaster from the Hunters Guild. In the manhwa, he's kind of this far-off character that you don't know much about, but in the anime, you are given a close-up to this man's psyche that I personally love. Throughout the first season of Solo Leveling, we see him struggling with his failed assault on Jeju Island. When Yoon Ho-baek confronts him about an interview, Jong-in segues into a conversation about the island and how they can't possibly just let it sit there in the ocean like a ticking time bomb. There's a point in this scene where the camera pans down to show that Jong-in's hand is shaking at the mere mention of the island. We're even shown that Yoon Ho-baek is troubled by the comrades he lost that day. And capping this off in episode 10, we see Jong-in wakes up from a nightmare in which he gazes down at his hands to see that they're covered in the blood of his comrades as flames dance around him. When from out of the flames, a survivor strides, only to be slaughtered by a massive pale ant looming overhead. This shit is so good. I know I've said the phrase world building a lot in this video, but I'm just gonna keep going. This is more than just world building. This is the unmistakable beating heart of Solo Leveling laid bare for all to see. Jinwoo Sung is no longer the only character who matters in this story. No, far from it. Because however small their roles may have been in the previous adaptations, in the anime each character is given a bit of screen time to show that they do indeed exist outside of Jinwoo's journey to become the world's most powerful hunter. An excuse as to why this doesn't happen in other series is often that it's not those characters' story, or that the author or artist only has so many words, so much ink, so many panels to tell said story, so instead of creating what many people will see as filler, they instead spend their time refining the protagonist's journey. But I for one kind of think it's lazy, because it's hard to write a world where people really live, where everything in existence doesn't just revolve around a single person. I know this for a fact because I've been writing for years and I've tossed out a litany of stories because I just couldn't wrangle the characters. But by using some of your precious time to do so, you create something special, something that truly lives instead of merely existing. Not to mention the fact that the anime manages to juggle this massive cast of characters while also fleshing out Jinwoo more than any adaptation prior. Much of this is accomplished through subtle changes like how Jinwoo gets fired up about going to the demon's castle, not for power and levels, but because it could possibly lead to a cure for his mother's disease. In the light novel and manhwa, this possibility isn't actually brought up until Jinwoo is well on his way through the castle. This small tweak to his motivations makes him a far better and more reliable character in my opinion. The expansion of his character doesn't end there though. In episode 6, when Dong Soo Kwang's party tries to kill Jinwoo, he sits for a moment and thinks about what just happened. He admonishes himself for not seeing it coming. He speaks about forgetting that this world is one based on the survival of the fittest and thinks back to his near death in the Karthanon temple. While in the light novel, it only speaks about how he was shocked for a split second that he'd have to kill several people before his feelings changed to relief that it meant that the system wanted to keep him alive. This is then followed by Jinwoo taking a human life for the first time. The anime shows that he's astounded by his actions and even thinks about stopping, but is pushed forward because the quest threatens to kill him. While in the light novel, Jinwoo doesn't even think about it. Instead, he just sizes up the rest of the squad. The anime, at least in this instance, doesn't make Jinwoo a more sympathetic character, but instead uses this moment to motivate him to become stronger. It sets a concrete goal for Jinwoo to become strong enough so that he'll never be taken advantage of again. I, for one, find that incredibly relatable. This version of Jinwoo is one who seeks power not only for his loved ones, but also so that he may live a life free of other people's selfish desires. In the anime, Jinwoo, like many others, is a real person with goals and motivations outside of power for its own sake. This is Solo Leveling's final form, one that, just like Jinwoo, has become stronger through its trials and tribulations and came out the other side something entirely different, a monster in its own right. So far in this video, I've tried to stick to my main thesis as Solo Leveling evolving throughout its adaptations, so I didn't feel like derailing that point by bringing up all the nitty-gritty little details that I loved about it. But now that I feel like I've made my point, I would be remiss to not talk about the audio. When people talk about audio design in a series, they often talk about music, which makes sense as it is a special medium that adds weight to every kind of adaptation. And the music in Solo Leveling is great. Its orchestric sounds wash over you and get your heart pumping to the beat of battle. Most notably, I love the music during Jinwoo's fight with the mages at the end of his job change quest. It's woven into the scene so well, first rolling in quietly as Jinwoo begins to piece together the true objective of the exam, only to burst forth when he finally figures it out and takes his first step toward completing the puzzle. But it doesn't end there. As the mages use their collective strength to summon the golem, the music intensifies once again. It's nothing short of fantastic. Yet I can say without a shadow of a doubt that it's nowhere near as evocative as something like My Hero Academia's You Say Run. No, while the music in Solo Leveling is downright great, I instead want to talk about its sound design and voice acting. I'll start this off by saying once again that I watched the dub. I can't read fast enough to enjoy subbed anime, and honestly, I'm kind of glad that I can't, because if I didn't have this inability to do so, I never would have experienced Alex Lay's amazing portrayal of Jinwoo. He is so fantastic in this role. The way that he dumbs down his voice when Jinwoo is going about his everyday life but ratchets it up during battle is downright inspired. The subtlety of his performance alone indicates to the audience that Jinwoo only truly feels alive when he's challenging himself against difficult opponents. Hell, this man even coughed up blood after recording the VO for Jinwoo's fight against Igris, so it's pretty obvious that he gave this role his all. And while I think that he shines in scenes like his fight with Igris, or when Jinwoo faces off against the blue venom-fanged Kasaka, I think that he's downright blinding in scenes where Jinwoo is feeling especially betrayed. Specifically, his sacrifice in the Karthanon Temple and attempted murder by Dong-soo Kwang. But I really can't give Alex all the credit. Caitlin Glass, the ADR director for Solo Leveling, was also an integral part to what makes this dub so great. From reading interviews with the two, it seems that she actually allowed Alex and the team to make changes to the script and ad-lib. More specifically, this line was written by Alex.
So if a weapon's not effective, I'll just switch things up. Let's throw hands.
I think that goes pretty hard. Some people don't believe he wrote it. I totally do. And one of the most insane things about this dub is that some of it was recorded virtually. As Alex Lay lives in Los Angeles and Crunchyroll is actually located in Dallas, Texas, there were times when the team had to work separately. In several interviews, Caitlin has spoken about the technical difficulties of this production and how there were several times when she just had to use her phone to send scenes to Alex. That is so wild considering how fantastic this dub is. This is something that both Alex and Caitlin have attributed to their amazing sound engineer Jamal Robinson, which, as a massive fan of audio, if I ever meet this man in person, I'm gonna have to shake his hand. There are times in this anime where I'm blown away by the sound effects. Specifically in episode 2, Jinwoo has just decided to sacrifice himself for Juhee and Mr. Song. As the statues toy with him, battering him around the room and slicing him to ribbons, Jinwoo's inner monologue is laid over the scene of his torture. But instead of masking that sound, they've chosen to keep it in the background, forcing the viewer to listen as this man dies. There are also subtle changes to his voice where they make him sound monstrous. It's fucking amazing, and I honestly don't know what else to say. I could go on and on about the little things that I love about this anime, but this video is already going to be incredibly long, and it's already going to be kind of janky because I'm trying to record this in a different way than I've done ever before, and I'm glad to be coming back to YouTube. So if you like this video, please leave me a like, subscribe subscribe. I'm going to be putting out at least one of these kinds of videos, little deep dives and stuff, at least once a month. Then I've got a second channel called Luckless Collection. That's where I'm going to be putting out weekly or bi-weekly videos about me trying to fill up my shelves with a bunch of shit. Because, you know, I hate having money. I love being poor, and my life wasn't hard enough already. So I've got a bunch of videos in the works. I've got some I'm editing. I've got some I've uploaded. It's a whole mess, but I'm really coming back to YouTube, and I'm ready to do this in a very real way. I'm gonna make this a career. I'm letting y'all know now, I'm grinding this out until I make this into a career. So please hit that subscribe button, give me a like, leave a comment letting me know what series you think I should cover next. Next up, I am likely going to be putting out either a video on Shangri-La Frontier or My Dress Up Darling, but you never know how these things go. If you would like to watch me collect some shit, click over here or somewhere, maybe on the end screen, to my second channel. And if you would like shorts, I'm going to be putting those out as well. Those are going to be likely like 60-second reviews and my collections and all sorts of different stuff. So subscribe for more content. I'm coming back with even more. I'm coming back harder than ever. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great day, and go watch some anime.